This reading is from Walt Whitman, Song of Myself, and we're going to share it. Of every hue and caste am I, of every rank and religion, a farmer, mechanic, artist, gentleman, sailor, Quaker, prisoner, fancy man, rowdy, lawyer, physician, and priest. I resist anything better than my own diversity, breathe the air, but leave plenty after me, and am not stuck up and am in my place. The moth and the fish eggs are in their place. The bright suns I see and the dark suns I cannot see are in their place. The palpable is in its place, and the impalpable is in its place.
These are really the thoughts of all men in all ages and lands. They are not original with me. If they are not yours as much as mine, they are nothing or next to nothing. If they are not the riddle and the untying of the riddle, they are nothing. If they are not just as close as they are distant, they are nothing. This is the grass that grows wherever the land is and the water is. This is the common air that bathes the globe.
We are weaving our lives. We are weaving our hearts and our minds. We are weaving the bright. We are weaving our lives. We are weaving our hearts and our minds. We are weaving the bright and dark threads of our journeys through. We are weaving our lives. We are weaving a blanket of light. We are weaving a basket to hold all that's true. We are weaving our lives. We are weaving our hearts and our minds. We are weaving the bright and dark threads of our journeys through. We are weaving our lives. We are weaving a blanket of light. We are weaving a basket to light. All that's true. We are weaving our lives. We are weaving our hearts and through, journeys through.
Today's theme, Old Stories Made New, is in 4 parts. I'll be talking about the book of Job from the Hebrew Bible, or the Old Testament, and Zena will cover the ideas of the Stoics from the Greek and Roman world. We will then each finish with how these centuries-old stories and ideas are meaningful to us today. Before I give a brief synopsis of the book of Job, I need to cover some introductory information. I'm going to be relying on my 2 favorite scholarly and quite contrasting translations. Robert Alter is Professor Emeritus of Hebrew and Comparative Literature at UC Berkeley. He's the more traditional of the 2, known especially for trying to convey the rhythm and impact of the original Hebrew prose in English. Stephen Mitchell is more of a maverick translator, ready to leave out mangled or defective verses or chapters, especially if they appear to be insertions of a, quote, inferior poet, or later pious editing. The book of Job at its core is a powerful story in verse, dealing with the big question, why do bad things happen to good people? To borrow from Rabbi Harold Kushner. Some consider it one of the oldest books of the Bible, but Alter and Mitchell primarily use the Hebrew Masoretic text from the 7th to 10th centuries of the Common Era, referring to other more ancient manuscripts as needed when encountering difficulties. We just don't have time today to get into the fascinating world of translation, so a summary, some snippets of the prose, and some thoughts about how this ancient cosmic theological story might still be relevant in a modern, not necessarily theistic setting. We start with the legend that provides the framework for the magnificent poetry. This from Mitchell. Once upon a time in the land of Uz, there was a man named Job. He is a Gentile, a man from the East. He's ridiculously wealthy, 7,000 sheep, 3,000 camels, and so on. Basically, he's your multi-billionaire of the ancient world. He also has a wife, 7 sons, and 3 daughters. So he's a blessed man, a pious man, almost repulsive piety, Mitchell suggests, praying, for example, even for his kids just in case they've had bad thoughts about God. But then disaster befalls Job, because as the legend tells us, the Lord allows the adversary to destroy his life. All his livestock, gone. One by one, the messengers arrive with the news of theft, destruction, and death. And while he was yet speaking, the next messenger arrives. Finally, the last messenger arrives to inform Job that all his children have died as well. So what's Job's famous response to this calamity? From Alter, naked I came from my mother's womb, and naked shall I return there. The Lord has given, and the Lord has taken. Blessed be the name of the Lord. Wow. That's all you've got, Job? At the next meeting, the Lord goads the adversary. How about my servant Job? Perfect integrity, even after you made me torment him for no reason. That's from Mitchell, quotes. The adversary's response, now borrowing from Alter, skin for skin. A man will give all he has for his own life, yet reach out, pray, your hand and strike his bone and his flesh. Will he not curse you to your face? So the adversary is given permission to hurt but not kill Job. And this is quotes, and he struck Job with a grievous burning rash from the soles of his feet to the crown of his head. Job sits down with a pottery shard to scrape his wounds, as his wife tells him to curse God and die. Job's response again. Shall we accept good from God too, and evil we shall not accept? Really, Job? That's it? Finally, three of Job's friends appear. This is still in the framework story, each from his own country, to comfort him. They are so shocked, they sit with him for 7 days and 7 nights. 7's a good number. Mitchell. And no one said a word, for they saw how great his suffering was.
We, none of us, rich or poor, educated or not, none of us can avoid suffering. May sound like a really harsh way to begin a story, but the truth of it cannot be escaped. When we are young, likely before much loss, and in this culture of ours, this lesson of suffering and loss may remain hidden. We celebrate all that is life and lively, but buried within that joy is sorrow. So it is today and has always been. In ancient times, suffering and loss was harder to avoid. Childhood was uncertain. Famine was one bad crop away. Childbirth was fraught with dangers. Sickness and disease were ever-present dangers. But natural disasters were often subsumed by man-made suffering, like wars and slavery. At issue is how to reconcile the big emotions we feel when our lives are upended. We've heard how Job dealt with the death of his family, poor health, the loss of wealth and status. But these issues are universal. My lesson today comes from the ancients. It is a timeless philosophy with roots in Greece in pre-Christian times, but it's best known today from the later philosophers like Epictetus and Marcus Aurelius. Epictetus was an unlikely philosopher. He was born into slavery, was disabled, perhaps by mistreatment. He was given his freedom in Rome and studied philosophy there, becoming a well-known teacher of Stoicism. One of his followers wrote his words down, and that's how we know of him today. His teachings gave many the tools to survive in harsh times. His understanding was to recognize that inner strength was our refuge, that our character was formed by adversity, and that we are able to carry on in the face of adversity by cultivating a clear understanding what is under our own control. His teachers would emphasize, as he says repeatedly, quote, "It is not events that disturb people, it is their judgments concerning those events." Foundational to Stoicism is that the event itself, the loss, the pain, are not suffering until we judge them as such. If we use our faculties to evaluate the experience, we can accept what happens, and suffering is mitigated through our understanding. The same goes for our triumphs and achievements. We are cautioned to not get too full of ourselves, cultivating always an understanding of our own limits. What is important is to recall what we control. We control 3 things: our actions, our reactions, and our character, which informs our actions and reactions. Epictetus leans heavily on centering ourselves in what we can and cannot affect. He said, "Seek not for things to happen the way you want them to, Rather wish that what happens happens the way it happens, and then you will be happy. There is a similarity here to Zen Buddhism. Our expectations of others is what brings us sorrow and sadness. The Buddhist seeks to live without expectations. For the Stoic, it's more like it's unrealistic to imagine beyond our own sphere of control. Harsh realities can be dealt with best by recognition of what we control. I've practiced a form of Stoicism as a way to return myself to serenity many times before I had a name for it. When needing to make a decision with some dire consequences, I might ask myself, okay, what's the worst thing that could happen here? And if I knew I could endure it, then it no longer controls me. This message of endurance in the face of dread is mirrored in many well-known poems. Here are just a few lines from a long poem called Invictus. It's a poem by William Ernest Henley. Invictus means unconquered. Out of the night that covers me, black as the pit from pole to pole, I thank whatever gods may be for my unconquerable soul. Lest you think Stoicism is only to be referenced in the most dire of circumstances, let me tell you, I believe it has some utility in our everyday lives. Mark's understanding of Job has some everyday lessons as well. So let's hear again from Mark and some lessons from the Old Testament.
We left Job suffering in silence in the presence of his three friends. Now, finally, we leave that framework story because the poet has showed up, revealing Job is not the meek pushover he appeared to be. Job doesn't actually curse God, Mitchell points out, but he does come close. A sampler of translations from Job's initial speech. From Mitchell. God damn the day I was born, and the night that forced me from the womb. Why couldn't I have died as they pulled me out of the dark? Why were there knees to hold me, breasts to keep me alive? My worst fears have happened. My nightmares have come to life. Silence and peace have abandoned me, and anguish camps in my heart. Remember the phrase from that last sentence, silence and peace have abandoned me, because we'll revisit that. Alter has Job start this way. Oh, let that night be barren. Let it have no song of joy. Let the day cursers hex it, those ready to rouse Leviathan. Let its twilight stars go dark. Let it hope for day in vain, and let it not see the eyelids of dawn. We cut Job's lament short. He goes on for quite a bit to cover the back and forth now between Job and his friends who've come to comfort him. All of them, Job and his friends, believe God is wise and all-knowing. This is a theological world. But Mitchell notes that they are working from opposite syllogisms. His friends, suffering comes from God. God is just. Therefore, Job is guilty. Job, suffering comes from God. I am innocent. Therefore, God is unjust. The friends each have different perspectives, but much of it comes down to what we see a lot of today, 2,000-3,000 years later. Prosperity theology, or prosperity gospel. The idea that financial success and physical well-being are evidence of divine grace blessings and rewards. The friends are desperately clinging to the worldview that the righteous might get tested to make them stronger, but ultimately they will be rewarded. And those friends are desperate because they are threatened by Job's plight. If Job is right that he is innocent but still tormented for no good reason, then who is to say that they aren't next? Just one example from Mitchell's Eliphaz, one of the friends. You are lucky that God has scolded you, so take his lesson to heart. For he wounds, then he binds up. He injures, but then he heals. Job is not taking this. He stands his ground. This is from Mitchell now. I will take my flesh in my teeth, hold my life in my hands. He may kill me, but I won't stop. I will speak the truth to his face. Listen now to my words. Pay attention to what I say, for I have prepared my defense, and I know that I am right. Finally, there is response from the voice in the whirlwind, or God, breaking down that prosperity gospel worldview. The response comes in two sections. The first is basically a long list of questions in fine verse, asking Job what he understands about the way the world works. From Altar, who is this who darkens counsel in my words without knowledge? Where were you when I founded the earth? Who fixes measures, do you know, or who stretched a line upon it? Who hedged the sea with double doors when it gushed forth from the womb, when I made cloud its clothing and thick mist its swaddling bands? Mitchell from another spot. Have you ever commanded morning or guided dawn to its place, to hold the corners of the sky and shake off the last few stars? Then the voice asks Job what he understands of justice in the world. From Mitchell, dress yourself like an emperor, climb up onto your throne, unleash your savage justice, cut down the rich and mighty, make the proud man grovel. Job is stunned, almost speechless. His response from Mitchell's translation, I have heard you with my ears, but now my eyes have seen you. Therefore I will be quiet, comforted that I am dust. The traditional response, for example, from the King James, has Job saying, wherefore I abhor myself and repent in dust and ashes. Wait, what? Mitchell, explaining his translation, how could this poet, after a venture of unprecedented daring, end with a hero merely beaten into submission? Job's response will not accommodate such whimpering. This can't be right. Note also in the epilogue, we're not going to get into that the Lord tells Job's friends they need to go make sacrifices because you have not spoken the truth about me, as my friend Job has. So we end with, therefore I will be quiet, comforted that I am dust. Some of that silence and peace that Job longed for has returned. Job's original big question was, why me? His realization, Mitchell argues, wrong question. And that is what connects me to a poet 2,000 plus years ago, especially at night, out camping, or in the outback under the Milky Way. Comforted that I am dust is the realization, boy, it gets me into its translations. It's the realization that I'm a small part of a magical universe, no grand moral order required. So that's an important understanding for me, but I have a feeling that we are left a little bit hanging at the end. Outside of Job's framework story, There is still real suffering in the world. Understanding doesn't help deal with that. So let's finish with Zena making a modern connection to the ancient Stoics.
Knitting together these two ancient texts has its challenges. Finding meaning in the mix, some takeaway as in, what does this have to do with me, is the larger question. Mark has studied multiple texts of Job and found meaning there. So the Stoic adheres to a discipline, but unlike Job, the Stoic would chastise Job's friends because they are making comparisons between their circumstances and Job's and finding him deficient. The Stoic is forever vigilant about what we truly control. We control our character, how we treat others, and how we respond to the world. His friends are making judgments about another's life, and that's beyond what they control. But the Stoic would say to Job, his riches to rags story, his ill health, is nothing because we are not promised health. We are not promised wealth. Again, we look to what we control, and none of that is on that list. We don't control how the world sees us, but we are both rational and social creatures, and our life flows better if we're living in agreement with nature and society. We all seek the good life, and Marcus Aurelius wrote many times in his meditations how we are to live. He stressed the importance of character. In our time, character has fallen out of favor. Our leaders are elected on the basis of charisma and their following. To be of high moral character, to use our rational minds in our every encounter, seems heartless and maybe even meaningless. How many clicks will one see on the social media for the rational thinker? Today, we prize persuasion and coercion as more effective tools. Maybe we need a lesson from Marcus Aurelius. He writes in his meditations, when you wake up in the morning, tell yourself, the people you will deal with today will be meddling, ungrateful, arrogant, dishonest, jealous, and surly. Sound familiar? Is this how you prepare for your day? We know and experience grievances every day. Some of them are petty, like driving behind someone going 20 in a 45 zone, or major ones, like harmful pranks or bullying or peer pressure. Then there are catastrophic grievances, like school shootings or body bags and news reports of acute starvation in parts of the world and other acts of violence. What do we do in such circumstances? Do we succumb to anger, resentment? Do we seek revenge? A Stoic reaches deep and recognizes a challenge to her character. She responds with the best antidote, forgiveness. Because to do anything else, to practice an eye for an eye, will leave two people shattered. Revenge is sweet only for a moment, and then it is a bitter pill. Yes, to be a Stoic is a difficult path. From forgiveness and with an open heart and a clear head, the circumstances can be evaluated and may call for action. But acting out of revenge and anger cannot yield a good outcome. So far, it feels pretty joyless to be a Stoic. Or to be Job, for that matter, whether he was loved by God or not. People associate Stoicism with stiff upper lip, However, to know I can change my experience of the world by realizing that my perceptions can be changed and improved by focusing on reality, now that's liberating. I must ask myself, how much of my experience is dictated by my emotions and my judgments, my prejudices, my expectations? Am I merely a puppet to my emotions? Or do I possess the ability to step back, to take a deep breath, recognize both my limitations and my imperatives, and to act in a deliberate and purposeful way? The ancient principles of Stoicism teach us our perceptions can be changed by careful self-examination, to strip away the wishful thinking, the fantasies, the negativism, the grief of, oh, I woulda, shoulda. Stoicism brings into clarity the world, who we are, and our place in it. What we truly control in this world comes down to ourselves. And when we truly commit to examining our own perceptions using rationality and reason, the result is like getting a new pair of glasses. We can just see things better. It's not to say we will not feel regret and longing, but these ancients had a mighty tool, and one that has real applications, I think, in our times.